The auditorium smelled like old wood and fresh nervousness, that particular blend of floor wax and stage curtains that every school building seemed to carry, no matter how many decades passed or how many coats of paint they added to the walls. Sarah Mitchell sat in the third row, hands folded tightly in her lap, forcing her spine straight against the metal folding chair that had probably been uncomfortable since 1987. She'd arrived exactly on time, not early enough to seem desperate for a good seat, not late enough to draw attention by walking in after the lights dimmed. She had calculated it perfectly, the way she calculated everything now, every move measured, every expression practiced. The program in her lap was already wrinkled at the edges where her thumbs had been pressing too hard. Spring Showcase, it read in cheerful purple letters. Third grade performance night. Her daughter Emma's name was listed halfway down the page, part of the group performing a song about seasons changing. Sarah had circled it with a pen earlier, though she didn't need to. She had memorized Emma's part, had listened to her practice in the kitchen every night for 2 weeks, had sewn a sunflower onto her yellow dress because Emma said she wanted to look like springtime. The seat next to her creaked as someone sat down. Sarah glanced sideways without really looking, the way strangers do in public spaces. A man, probably another parent. Dark jacket. The faint scent of coffee and something clean, like laundry detergent. She shifted slightly away, creating that careful bubble of personal space that said she wasn't looking for conversation. She was here for Emma. Only for Emma. The lights dimmed. A hush rolled through the crowd like a wave, punctuated by the rustling of programs and someone's phone buzzing before being silenced. Principal Henderson stepped onto the stage, her heels clicking against the wood, and Sarah felt her chest tighten. This was it. The moment she'd been bracing for all week, the moment when she had to be enough. The principal's voice filled the space, warm and practiced. Good evening, families. Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate our wonderful third graders. Sarah heard the word families and felt something crack inside her ribs. Families, plural, complete units. She glanced around the auditorium at the couples holding hands, at the grandparents beaming in the back row, at the father in front of her with his arm draped casually over his wife's shoulders. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She knew without looking it was probably David, her ex-husband, texting some excuse about why he couldn't make it. Work emergency. Traffic. Something that sounded legitimate enough that Emma would have to accept it, even though they both knew better. Sarah's hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against her thighs, willing them to be still. Emma would search the crowd when she came on stage. Emma always searched for her face, those big brown eyes scanning the rows until they found her mother's smile. Sarah had to have that smile ready, had to be the lighthouse Emma needed. It didn't matter that she'd worked a double shift at the hospital yesterday. Didn't matter that the electricity bill was overdue, or that she'd eaten cereal for dinner 3 nights running because groceries were expensive and Emma needed new shoes. Didn't matter that the apartment felt too quiet after Emma went to bed, or that some nights Sarah sat in the bathroom with the water running so her daughter wouldn't hear her cry. None of it mattered. Emma needed to see her mother in that audience, strong and steady and proud. So Sarah would be strong, she would be steady, she had to be. The kindergarteners went first, a wobbly rendition of a song about rainbows that made the audience chuckle affectionately. Then the first graders. The second graders. Sarah's heart was hammering now, a rhythm that felt too fast and too loud. Her palms were damp. She rubbed them against her jeans, leaving darker streaks on the denim. The man next to her shifted in his seat, and she caught a glimpse of his face in profile. Strong jaw, tired eyes, the kind of expression that suggested he'd also learned how to fake composure when everything inside felt like it was falling apart. And now, Principal Henderson announced, her voice rising with enthusiasm. Please welcome our third grade class with their presentation, The Year Goes Round. The curtain opened. 23 8-year-olds stood on the stage in various states of readiness, some waving frantically at parents, others frozen with stage fright. Sarah's eyes found Emma immediately. There she was, third from the left, wearing the yellow dress with the sunflower. Her hair pulled back in the braids Sarah had spent 15 minutes perfecting that morning. Emma's face was serious, concentrated, the way she looked when she was trying so hard to get something right. The music started. The children began to sing, their voices thin and sweet and slightly off-key in the way that children's voices always are. Sarah felt her throat close. Emma was mouthing the words carefully, her small hands moving through the choreography they'd learned. Spring turns to summer, summer turns to fall. The seasons keep on changing, but the love remains through all. Love remains through all. Sarah bit down on the inside of her cheek, hard enough to taste copper. She would not cry. She would not. Emma needed to see her smiling, but the words kept echoing. Love remains. Love remains. Except sometimes it didn't, did it? Sometimes love packed its bags and signed divorce papers and stopped showing up to school events. Sometimes love became a weekend phone call and missed birthdays and a father who had started a new life with a new wife who didn't have stretch marks or exhaustion written into every line of her face. Emma's eyes were searching the crowd now, even as she sang. Sarah saw the moment her daughter found her, saw Emma's face light up with relief and joy. Sarah waved, smiling so hard her face hurt, and Emma's voice grew stronger. She was singing for her mother now, every note a little gift. Sarah clapped along with the music, hands meeting palm to palm with too much force, making a sound that was almost aggressive in its enthusiasm. Look at me being a good mother. Look at me being enough. Look at me not falling apart. But then Emma's eyes moved, scanning, still searching, looking for someone else. And Sarah knew. She knew Emma was looking for David, looking for her father who had promised he'd try to make it, who had said he'd do his best. Emma kept singing, kept moving through the choreography, but Sarah could see the exact moment her daughter realized that only one parent was there. Could see the way Emma's smile stayed fixed, but something dimmed behind her eyes. Could see her child doing exactly what Sarah herself was doing, pretending to be fine when everything felt broken. The music swelled. The children's voices rose together, and something inside Sarah shattered. The tears came before she could stop them, hot and fast and humiliating. She ducked her head, lifting her hand to her face as if she was just wiping away a stray eyelash, but her shoulders were shaking now and she couldn't breathe right. She had to hold it together, had to. Emma was still on stage. Emma couldn't see her mother breaking down in the third row like some fragile thing who couldn't handle a simple school performance. But the tears wouldn't stop, and her chest was heaving with the effort of keeping the sobs silent, and she felt like she was drowning in this room full of families who had it all figured out. A tissue appeared in her peripheral vision, plain white, unscented, held out by a steady hand. Sarah glanced sideways through her tears and saw the man next to her offering it, his face carefully angled toward the stage, as if he wasn't really watching her at all. As if he was just someone who happened to have a tissue and happened to notice someone might need one. The gesture was so gentle, so respectful of her dignity, that it made her cry harder, even as she accepted it. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking on both words. She pressed the tissue to her eyes, shoulders curled inward, trying to make herself smaller. Invisible. She'd ruined it. Emma would see. Everyone would see. The divorced mom who couldn't keep it together, the single parent who broke down at a children's concert because she was so tired of being strong, so tired of being alone, so tired of watching her child look for a father who wasn't there. The man beside her didn't speak, didn't offer platitudes or awkward pats, but after a moment she felt him shift slightly closer, creating a subtle shield with his body so that fewer people could see her tears. It was such a small thing, but it felt like the kindest gesture anyone had offered her in months. The song ended. The audience erupted in applause. Sarah forced herself to sit up, to wipe her face roughly, to clap, even though her hands were trembling so badly she could barely make them connect. Emma was taking a bow with her classmates, and Sarah needed her daughter to see her mother's pride, not her mother's pain. She needed Emma to remember this moment as joyful, not as the night Mom cried in public because Dad didn't show up again. The children filed off the stage, and the fourth graders began setting up for their presentation. The auditorium lights stayed dim, creating a strange twilight atmosphere where Sarah felt both exposed and hidden at the same time. She kept the tissue pressed to her face, trying to compose herself, trying to rebuild the mask she'd worn in here. The man beside her made a small movement. Sarah glanced over and saw him looking at her directly now, his expression serious but not pitying. His eyes were kind, tired, but kind. And then he did something that stopped her breath entirely. He lifted his hands and began to move them in deliberate, fluid motions. Shapes and signs that Sarah recognized instantly because she'd learned them herself years ago, when her best friend in college had been deaf and had taught her the basics of ASL. She watched his hands form the words with careful precision. "You're not alone." The message hung in the air between them, signed in silence while the fourth graders sang on stage. "You're not alone." 4 words that weren't spoken, couldn't be overheard by anyone else in that crowded auditorium, but landed in Sarah's chest like an anchor, like a lifeline, like something solid to hold on to. Her breath caught. She stared at him, and he held her gaze steadily, then repeated the sign more slowly. "You're not alone." His face was serious, but there was something in his eyes that said he meant it, that he understood, that he'd been exactly where she was sitting, in exactly this kind of pain, trying to hold exactly this kind of secret together in a room full of people who couldn't see the cracks. Sarah's hands moved before she could think about it, signing back in ASL. "Thank you." The muscle memory was still there, rusty but present. She hadn't used sign language in years, not since Jenny had moved away after graduation, but her fingers remembered the shapes, remembered how to speak in silence. The man nodded, just once, and then turned his attention back to the stage as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just witnessed her falling apart, as if he hadn't just offered her the most profound kindness she'd received in months. Sarah sat there, hands still trembling but somehow steadier now, and tried to make sense of what had just occurred. She studied him from the corner of her eye. He looked to be around her age, maybe late 30s. There was grey threading through his hair at the temples. He wore a wedding ring, and for a moment Sarah's heart sank. Of course he was married. Of course he had someone. Of course she was the only one sitting here alone. But then she noticed how he twisted it around his finger, the way people do with rings they're no longer sure belong there. The way she still twisted her own bare finger sometimes, muscle memory searching for gold that was no longer there. The 4th grade performance ended. Intermission was announced. The lights came up, harsh and revealing, and Sarah blinked in the sudden brightness. Parents stood, stretched, moved toward the refreshment table someone had set up in the back. Sarah stayed seated, not ready to face the social minefield of small talk and questions about where Emma's father was. She pulled out her phone, needing something to do with her hands, and saw 3 missed texts from David. "Stuck at office. Major client issue. Tell Emma I'm sorry. We'll make it up to her." The same words he always used, the same hollow promises. Sarah's jaw tightened. She typed back, "She was looking for you. She saw your seat was empty." She hit send before she could soften it, before she could protect him from the consequences of his choices, the way she always did. "That's rough," a quiet voice said beside her. Sarah jumped slightly, turning to see the man still sitting there, his own phone in his hand. He gestured to her screen with a slight tilt of his head. "Kids notice everything, don't they? Even the stuff we wish they'd miss." His voice matched his signing, gentle but direct. Sarah found herself nodding before she could remember that she didn't talk to strangers about her life, didn't let people see the mess behind the carefully maintained facade. "Yeah," she said, her voice rough from crying. "They do." He was quiet for a moment, watching parents mill around. Then he said, "My daughter's in the 4th grade group. She saw me sitting alone and asked before the show if her mom was coming late. I had to tell her no. Again." He twisted the ring on his finger. "She's been gone for 2 years. Cancer. But somehow it doesn't get easier, explaining why there's only one of us here when everyone else seems to come in pairs." Sarah's breath caught. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. Her own problems suddenly felt small and selfish. Here she was crying because her ex-husband had chosen not to show up, and this man was sitting next to her, dealing with loss that was permanent and unfixable. But he shook his head. "Different pain, same weight," he said. "That's what my grief counselor told me. There's no hierarchy of hurt. Loss is loss. Being alone in a room full of families is hard, no matter what brought you to that empty seat." He paused. "I saw you earlier. Saw how hard you were trying to hold it together. Recognized it because I do the same thing every time I come to one of these events." Sarah studied him more carefully now, saw the exhaustion etched around his eyes, the way his shirt was wrinkled as if he'd grabbed it from the dryer that morning without ironing, the faint coffee stain on his sleeve that suggested he'd dressed in a hurry, probably juggling too many responsibilities at once. She recognized all of it, because she lived all of it. "How do you do it?" she asked. "How do you keep showing up when it hurts this much?" "For her," he said simply, "because she looks for my face in the crowd the same way your daughter looks for yours, and because showing up is the one promise I can keep, even on days when I'm barely keeping my head above water." He met her eyes. "I'm Marcus, by way of introduction, Marcus Chen, father of one extremely talented fourth grader who's about to absolutely nail her poetry reading, assuming I can pull myself together enough to watch it without falling apart." "Sarah Mitchell," she replied, "mother of one extremely talented third grader who just sang her heart out despite noticing her father couldn't be bothered to rearrange his schedule." She was surprised by the bitterness in her own voice, usually so carefully modulated, but something about this stranger's honesty had unlocked something in her. Marcus nodded. "That's the hardest part, isn't it? Watching them realize, watching them learn that some people are going to disappoint them over and over, and there's nothing we can do to fix it." He paused. "My daughter, Lily, she asked me last month why her mum had to die. Not just why she died, but why she had to. As if there was some cosmic reason, some lesson we were supposed to learn." His voice cracked slightly. "I didn't have an answer. Still don't." Sarah found herself telling the truth in return, something she rarely did even with close friends. "Emma asked me last week why Daddy doesn't love us anymore. Not her, us. As if we're a package deal that got rejected together." She swallowed hard. "I told her that he does love her, that adult relationships are complicated, all the things you're supposed to say. But the truth is, I don't know. I don't know why he walked away. Why we weren't enough. Why some marriages last 50 years and mine couldn't make it to 10. "Because people are complicated," Marcus said quietly. "Because sometimes there's no good answer. Sometimes things just break, and no amount of trying to understand why will change the fact that you're left holding the pieces." He looked at her with an expression that was equal parts sad and kind. "But you're here. You showed up. You're holding those pieces together for your daughter, and that takes more strength than staying ever did." The lights dimmed again, signaling the end of intermission. Parents hurried back to their seats. A woman squeezed past them, mumbling apologies, and Sarah caught a whiff of expensive perfume. The kind of perfume that women wore when they had time for things like shopping and self-care, when they weren't working double shifts and trying to figure out how to pay for a broken water heater. She felt a familiar surge of inadequacy, but then Marcus caught her eye and signed quickly. "Breathe." Just that one word, breathe. But it helped. Sarah drew in a long breath, held it, let it out slowly. The simple act of being reminded to breathe, of having someone notice she'd been holding her breath against the world, made her feel steadier. The fourth graders took the stage. Marcus leaned forward slightly, his attention focusing in a way that made it clear he was preparing to be fully present for his daughter. Sarah watched him, mouth along with a girl in the front row. That must be Lily. Dark hair, serious expression, the same tired eyes as her father. She looked small standing up there, but when she stepped forward to recite her poem, her voice was clear and strong. "My mum told me that spring always comes," Lily began. "Even after the longest winter, even when the snow feels like it will never melt. She said that flowers remember how to bloom even if they forget for a while, even if they're sleeping underground where nobody can see." She paused, and Sarah could see the child's hands shaking slightly as she held her paper. "My mum isn't here anymore to see the spring, but I'm still blooming, and I think maybe she can see that, wherever she is. I think maybe that's enough." The auditorium was silent, not the polite silence of an audience, but the profound silence of people who'd just heard something true, something that hurt and healed at the same time. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face again, but these were different. These weren't tears of shame or exhaustion. These were tears for this brave little girl who'd stood on that stage and spoken her grief out loud, who'd taken her broken heart and turned it into art. When Lily finished and took her bow, the applause was thunderous. But Sarah watched Marcus, watched the way his hands shook as he clapped, watched him wipe his eyes roughly with his palm, watched him smile so hard for his daughter that his face looked like it might crack, just like Sarah had smiled for Emma. Two parents, sitting side by side, both holding themselves together with sheer force of will for the children who needed them to be strong. The rest of the performances passed in a blur. Sarah's mind was spinning, processing everything that had happened in the last hour. This stranger who'd witnessed her breakdown, who'd signed to her in silence, who'd shared his own pain without making it a competition or comparison. She felt something shifting inside her chest, some tight knot of isolation beginning to loosen. For so long she'd felt like the only person in the world carrying this particular weight, the only divorced parent struggling to be enough, the only mother sitting alone while everyone else seemed to have their lives figured out. But Marcus was sitting alone too, for different reasons, but the loneliness was the same, the weight was the same, and somehow knowing that made her feel less like she was drowning and more like she was treading water, still hard, still exhausting, but survivable. When the final curtain call ended and the lights came up for good, children poured off the stage to find their families. Emma came running up the aisle, her face flushed with excitement, and Sarah stood to catch her daughter in a tight hug. "You were perfect," she whispered into Emma's hair. "So perfect. I'm so proud of you." "Did you see me, Mum? Did you see when I did the spin move?" "I saw everything, sweetheart, every single second." Sarah pulled back to look at her daughter's face, at those brown eyes that had searched the audience and found her mother waiting. "You were the best flower on that stage." Emma beamed, then her expression shifted to something more cautious. "Dad didn't come?" Sarah's chest tightened, but before she could formulate an answer, Marcus spoke up. "Hey there." He'd been standing a few feet away, waiting for his own daughter, but he stepped closer now. "I just wanted to tell you that your singing was really great. You have a beautiful voice." Emma looked at him shyly, then back at Sarah for permission. Sarah nodded, and Emma said, "Thank you." "Are you Lily's dad?" "I am," Marcus smiled. "She's just grabbing her stuff backstage, should be out any second." As if on cue, Lily appeared holding her paper and backpack. She saw her father and ran to him, and Sarah watched Marcus scoop her up, despite the fact that she was probably too big to be lifted anymore. Watched him hold her tight and tell her how proud he was. Watched this man who'd lost his wife find joy in his daughter's accomplishment despite the empty seat beside him. "Mom?" Emma tugged on Sarah's sleeve. "Can we go get ice cream? You said maybe if I did good we could celebrate." Sarah hesitated. Ice cream meant money she probably shouldn't spend, meant getting home late on a school night. But Emma's face was so hopeful, and Sarah had promised. "Yeah," she said, "yeah, we can get ice cream." "There's a place down the street," Marcus said almost hesitantly. "Molly's. They have really good mint chip if you like that kind of thing. Lily and I were thinking about stopping by there." He paused, meeting Sarah's eyes with a question in his expression. "You two are welcome to join us, if you want. No pressure. But sometimes it's nice to celebrate with people who understand." Sarah's first instinct was to say no, to maintain her boundaries, to protect Emma from getting attached to people who might not stay, to protect herself from hoping for connection that probably wouldn't last beyond tonight. But then she saw Emma looking up at her with those big eyes, saw Lily standing next to her father with the same slightly lonely expression that Emma wore sometimes, and she thought about how Marcus had signed to her in the dark. "You're not alone." "We'd like that," Sarah heard herself say. "Ice cream sounds perfect." They walked out of the school together, two single parents and two children who'd all learned too young that families come in different shapes, that sometimes love doesn't last the way the songs say it will, that the person you thought would be there forever might leave an empty seat. The night air was cool against Sarah's tear-stained face. She could hear Emma chattering to Lily about their performances, the two girls falling into easy conversation the way children do. "Thank you," Sarah said to Marcus, her voice low enough that the kids wouldn't hear. "For earlier, for the tissue, for the—" She lifted her hands and signed, "You're not alone." He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his tired eyes. "I learned ASL from my mother," he said. "She went deaf when I was in high school. Thought I'd never use it again after she passed. But tonight, it felt like the only way to say what needed saying without making a scene, without taking attention away from your daughter when she needed you focused." "My best friend in college was deaf," Sarah said. "I learned it for her. Forgot most of it, but I remember the important parts." She paused. "You could have just ignored me. Most people would have." "I've been ignored plenty of times," Marcus said. "People see a widower at school events and they don't know what to say, so they say nothing. They change the subject when I mention my wife. They stop inviting me to couples nights because I'm the odd number that makes dinner parties awkward." He looked at her. "I know what it feels like to be alone in a crowd. I wouldn't wish that on anyone." They reached the ice cream shop, a small place with cheerful blue and white striped awnings and a bell that jingled when they pushed open the door. The scent of waffle cones and sugar wrapped around them, and both girls squealed with delight at the array of flavors visible through the glass case. Sarah tried to calculate quickly how much this would cost, whether she could afford 2 scoops or if she should suggest just one, but Marcus was already pulling out his wallet. "My treat," he said before she could protest. "Lily got an A on her history project this week, and we're celebrating." The more the merrier, Sarah wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her independence. But Emma was already ordering strawberry with rainbow sprinkles, and Lily was debating between chocolate chip cookie dough and peanut butter cup. And Sarah realized suddenly that letting someone do something kind for her wasn't the same as being weak, that accepting help wasn't admitting failure, that maybe, just maybe, she didn't have to carry everything alone. "Thank you," she said again, and Marcus just nodded. They found a table by the window, sticky with the residue of previous customers but cheerful in its shabbiness. The girls sat on one side, already deep in conversation about their favorite Disney movies. Sarah and Marcus took the other side, each with their own modest single scoop, coffee for him, vanilla for her, and for a few minutes they all just ate in comfortable silence. "I hate these events," Marcus said eventually, keeping his voice low. "Love watching Lily but hate everything else about them. The small talk, the questions about whether I'm dating yet, the pity in people's eyes when they remember that Julie's gone." He took a bite of ice cream. "But tonight was different. Better, somehow. Because you were there." Sarah felt warmth bloom in her chest, unexpected and strange. "I almost didn't come," she confessed. "Thought about texting Emma's teacher and saying I was sick. Thought about letting David's mother take her instead. I was so afraid of falling apart exactly the way I did. But you came anyway," Marcus pointed out. "That's what matters." "I fell apart anyway," Sarah countered. "And the world didn't end," Marcus said gently. "Emma still sang. You still clapped. The earth kept turning. Sometimes falling apart is just proof that you're human, that you're feeling things, that you care enough for it to hurt." Sarah stirred her ice cream, watching it melt into swirls. "My ex-husband used to tell me I was too emotional, that I took everything too seriously, that I needed to learn to just let things go." She looked up at Marcus. "For a long time after he left, I believed him. Thought maybe if I'd been different, less intense, less needy, he would have stayed." "That's not how it works," Marcus said. "People who leave find reasons to justify leaving. They rewrite history so they're not the villain. My wife couldn't help dying, but I've met plenty of widowers whose wives walked away from the marriage before illness took them, and every single one of them was told they weren't enough in some way. Not successful enough, not attentive enough, not exciting enough. The problem is never actually you. The problem is them deciding they want something different and being too cowardly to own that choice without blaming you for it." The words hit Sarah like a physical force. She'd spent so many nights lying awake, cataloguing her failures, the ways she'd fallen short, the moments she'd been irritable or tired or less than perfect. She'd built an entire architecture of self-blame, convinced that if she'd just been better, the marriage would have survived. But Marcus was right. David had left because David wanted to leave, because he'd met someone at work and decided that new love was more exciting than old love, because he'd chosen himself over his family, and no amount of Sarah being perfect would have changed that fundamental selfishness. "I needed to hear that," she whispered. "I've been carrying so much guilt." "Guilt is heavy," Marcus agreed. "I carried it too after Julie died. Kept thinking if I'd noticed her symptoms earlier, if I'd pushed her to see the doctor sooner, maybe we would have caught the cancer in time. Drove myself crazy with what-ifs until my therapist finally got through to me. She said, 'Marcus, you can't control the past. You can only control what you do right now in this moment.' So that's what I try to do. I try to show up right now, be present right now, make Lily's life good right now. Tomorrow can worry about itself." "Mom!" Emma's voice cut through their conversation. "Lily says her class is going to the Science Museum next month. Is our class going too?" Sarah dragged her attention back to her daughter, grateful for the interruption before she started crying again. "I don't know, sweetie. I'd have to check the class calendar." "We should go together if you are," Lily chimed in, looking at her father hopefully, as chaperones. Marcus and Sarah exchanged glances, both of them seeing the trap their daughters were setting with the innocent transparency of children who'd decided their parents needed friends, or maybe something more than friends. Emma and Lily were grinning at each other like conspirators. "We'll see," Marcus said diplomatically. "That's a few weeks away." "Translation? Probably not," Lily said, with the world weariness of a child who'd learned to interpret adult speak. But she didn't look too disappointed. She was already moving on to her next topic, asking Emma about her favorite subject in school. Sarah's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and saw another text from David. "I said I was sorry. You don't have to be cruel about it." Her stomach twisted. Cruel. He thought she was being cruel by telling him the truth about his daughter's disappointment. She started to type a response, then stopped, deleted it, put the phone face down on the table. "You okay?" Marcus asked quietly. "Just my ex," she said. "Upset that I pointed out Emma noticed he wasn't there." She shook her head. "He wants credit for trying without actually having to do the hard work of showing up." "I know the type," Marcus said. "Julie's brother is like that with his kids. Shows up for the fun parts, disappears for the tough stuff, still expects to be called Father of the Year." He paused. "It's not your job to protect him from the consequences of his choices. Emma deserves to have her feelings validated, not erased for his comfort." Sarah felt something release in her chest. Permission she didn't know she'd been seeking. For so long she'd been the mediator, the peacekeeper, the one who smoothed over David's absences and made excuses so Emma wouldn't be too hurt. But Marcus was right. Protecting David meant hurting Emma. Meant teaching her daughter that her feelings mattered less than her father's comfort, meant perpetuating a cycle of prioritizing men who didn't deserve it. "I'm going to stop making excuses for him," Sarah said, surprised by her own certainty. "If he doesn't show up, I'm going to tell Emma the truth, that her father chose not to be there, that it's not her fault, that she deserves better." "That's a good start," Marcus said. "Next step is believing you deserve better too." They stayed at the ice cream shop until the girls had finished their cones and started yawning. The employee behind the counter was wiping down tables, a subtle hint that closing time was approaching. Outside, the streetlights had come on, casting pools of yellow light onto the sidewalk. Sarah gathered her purse and Emma's backpack, that familiar exhaustion settling into her bones. But it was different tonight. The weight was still there, bills and responsibilities and the endless challenge of single parenting. But she felt less like she was drowning under it. As they walked toward the parking lot, Emma slipped her hand into Sarah's. "I had fun tonight, Mom," she said. "Even though Dad wasn't there, is that bad?" Sarah's heart broke and mended simultaneously. "No, sweetie, that's not bad at all. That's you learning that happiness doesn't depend on one person showing up. That's you finding joy even when things aren't perfect." She squeezed Emma's hand. "That's you being brave and strong and exactly who you're supposed to be." "Like you," Emma said simply. "You're brave and strong too, Mum." Sarah had to stop walking for a moment, had to blink back tears. Her daughter saw her strength, saw past the moments of crying in auditoriums and struggling to pay bills, saw the person Sarah was trying so hard to be. That realization felt like being handed a gift she didn't know she needed. They reached Sarah's car, a 12-year-old sedan that had seen better days but still ran. Marcus and Lily were parked a few spaces over. The girls hugged goodbye with promises to sit together at lunch next week. Sarah found herself exchanging phone numbers with Marcus, both of them acknowledging without saying so that this wasn't just a random encounter they'd forget about tomorrow. "Thank you again," Sarah said, as Marcus and Lily headed to their car. "For everything, for seeing me, for—" She hesitated, then signed it. "Not letting me be alone." Marcus signed back, "Same to you." Then, out loud, he added, "Text me if you need anything, or if you just need someone who gets it. Someone who knows what it's like." He paused. "And Sarah, you're doing a great job, with Emma, with all of it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." She nodded, not trusting her voice. Watched them drive away before helping Emma into the back seat and buckling her in. The drive home was quiet, Emma's head already nodding toward sleep in the rearview mirror. Sarah turned on the radio softly, letting music fill the silence. Her chest felt different, lighter somehow. Like a pressure valve had been released. When they got home, Emma was too tired for the usual bedtime routine. Sarah helped her change into pajamas and brush her teeth in a sleepy haze, then tucked her into bed with her favorite stuffed rabbit. "I love you, baby girl," Sarah whispered, kissing Emma's forehead. "More than all the stars in the sky." "Love you too, Mom," Emma mumbled, already half asleep. "Tonight was good. I liked Lily, and her dad was nice." "Yeah," Sarah agreed softly. "He was." After Emma's breathing had deepened into sleep, Sarah wandered to her own bedroom. She caught sight of herself in the mirror, mascara smudged, exhausted, wearing the same jeans and sweater she'd thrown on that morning in her rush to get Emma ready for school. She looked tired, she looked worn down, but she didn't look broken. Not anymore. She pulled out her phone and stared at it for a long moment. Then, before she could second-guess herself, she texted Marcus, "Thank you again for tonight. I haven't felt that seen or understood in a very long time. It meant more than you probably realize." His response came a few minutes later. "It meant a lot to me, too. Grief and divorce are different roads, but they both lead to the same kind of loneliness. It helps to know someone else is walking their own hard path. Makes mine feel a little less isolating." They texted back and forth for a while. Nothing deep or profound, just the small talk of two people getting to know each other. He told her about his job as a software engineer, how he worked from home so he could be available for Lily. She told him about working as a nurse, about the chaos of hospital shifts, and the satisfaction of helping people on their worst days. They compared notes on single parenting, the guilt, the exhaustion, the small victories that nobody else understood the significance of. Finally, Sarah typed, "I should get some sleep, long shift tomorrow. But thank you for this, for making tonight bearable, for reminding me that I'm not the only person struggling to hold things together." "You're not," Marcus wrote back, "and you don't have to hold them together alone. That's what I learned the hard way. Community matters. Connection matters. Even if it's just one person sitting next to you who gets it. That one person can change everything." Sarah set her phone down and lay back on her bed, staring at the ceiling. She thought about Emma singing on that stage, about Lily reciting her poem about spring, about Marcus signing to her in the dark, about the way kindness had appeared exactly when she'd needed it most, in the form of a stranger who understood what it meant to keep showing up even when everything hurt. She thought about the empty seat next to her at the school event, the one David should have filled. For so long, that empty seat had felt like a commentary on her worth, proof that she wasn't enough to make someone stay. But tonight, Marcus had sat in that seat. Not as a replacement for what she'd lost, but as a reminder that empty seats can be filled in unexpected ways. That family isn't just the people who share your DNA or your marriage license. That sometimes the people who show up for you are the ones you never saw coming. Sarah's phone lit up with one last text from Marcus. "Sweet dreams, Sarah Mitchell. You're stronger than you think you are." She smiled and texted back, "You too, Marcus Chen. Lily is lucky to have you." Then she added, almost as an afterthought, "Emma and I would love to chaperone the museum trip with you and Lily, if the offer still stands." His response was immediate. "It stands. I'll check with Lily's teacher about the details and let you know." Sarah put her phone on the nightstand and closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring more challenges: bills to pay, shifts to work, co-parenting complications with David. The path ahead was still difficult, but tonight, for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had someone walking a parallel path, someone who understood what it meant to choose presence over perfection, to show up when it hurt, to find strength in vulnerability. The memory of Marcus's hands forming those signs played in her mind. "You're not alone." 4 words that had somehow shifted her entire world. 4 words that reminded her that surviving wasn't the same as thriving, but both required help. That asking for support wasn't weakness, that being seen in your brokenness by someone who didn't flinch away was its own kind of healing. Sarah drifted towards sleep with those words echoing in her mind, a gentle promise that tomorrow didn't have to be quite as heavy as today had been. That maybe, just maybe, she was building something new from the pieces of what had broken. Not a replacement for the family she'd lost, but something different, something real. Something that began with a single father signing kindness in the dark, and a single mother learning to accept it. The truth was that loneliness didn't disappear because you met one person who understood. The path didn't suddenly become easy. Emma would still look for her father at future events. David would still disappoint them. Bills would still pile up. Exhaustion would still seep into Sarah's bones on those long hospital shifts. But now there was a thread of connection running through all of it, a lifeline she could reach for on the hardest days. Someone who would answer the phone or meet for coffee, or just text a reminder that she wasn't the only person barely holding it together. And maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. If you found yourself in this story, in Sarah's tears, or Marcus's quiet strength, or Emma's brave singing, or Lily's poetic grief, then you understand that healing doesn't come in grand gestures. It comes in small acts of showing up, in tissues offered without judgment, in signs spoken when words are too loud. Can ice cream shared with people who get it. These are the moments that matter. These are the stories that remind us we're human and connected, and never quite as alone as we feel. If this story touched something in you, consider subscribing to this channel, because we're here to share more of these moments, the real ones, the hard ones, the ones that hurt and heal at the same time. Stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things just by choosing to be present, by choosing to see each other, by choosing to sign "You're not alone" when someone needs it most. This is a community of people walking difficult paths, finding strength in sharing them, and we'd love for you to be part of it. Because just like Sarah learned tonight, you're not alone either. None of us are.